Welcome to the Talk Doesn't Cook Rice podcast with myself, John Staskowski, and Danny Massaro, where we explore thought-provoking concepts and provide practical insights to enrich modern life. We hope you enjoy this episode.
This is something. This is nothing. This is solid. This is space. Between yourself and the world of nature outside you.
Right, Danny, I was going to say Becoming, but I don't know if we will call this podcast Becoming, so the listener can see at the end if we end up calling this Becoming, or it might be Flux or something like that. But our start point is going to be a little trip back in the day to ancient Greece, and a start point, one of the first philosophers. So we're going way back beyond Socrates and Plato and people like that, and we're just going to start with some of the ideas of Heraclitus, who was famously known as the weeping philosopher because he didn't really like human beings. He thought we were all just like ignorant idiots who were just obsessed with food and sex and like surface level pleasures, and he was big into deep thinking and questioning the universe and what's going on and all that kind of stuff. But Heraclitus has got some really interesting ideas that I think are really useful to the current day, just in how we live. So most people will have heard the quote at some point, "You can't step in the same river twice." That was Heraclitus, and that gives you a clue straight away. His philosophy is all about change, essentially. Probably flux is the most appropriate word for that. So the river that you're going to step in is always flowing and moving and never static. So I don't know, if you stripped it back to the different water molecules, they are different every time you step in the river. And you as a person are constantly in flux and changing. So you are literally not the same person who's going to step in the river. And that was really at the core of his perspective. Some of these early philosophers were really trying to get into what is the nature of reality? What is reality? What's it made of? What are some of the core factors that make up the world? And therefore, how should we live based on that? So there were different philosophers through time who had different ideas. So there were people like Thales or Thales who thought, well, everything's just made of water, basically. And then you had other people come along, it's like, no, it's made of air. People might, or would probably recognize Pythagoras from school. Well, he was like, well, reality is all these mathematical principles and stuff going on around that. Heraclitus, he thought, well, reality is essentially change. It's flux. That is the nature of reality. It is change, it's flux. And therefore, that gives us some clues towards how we should live. And that was his real core concept that we're just going to take as our start point to get into. There are some other aspects around that we're going to bring in around. He was very big on this interplay of opposites, as we'll see. He thought strife was a core component of life and what makes up life and reality. But the reason I mentioned Becoming earlier was it's very much a philosophy of becoming, whereas some of the philosophers at his time were more on team being, which is like, nah, change is an illusion. Basically, everything is just static and it's unchanging, and that's the nature of reality. Heraclitus was like, no, that's bullshit. Reality is, by definition, in flux all the time. So that's what we're going to get into. There's probably a load of different rabbit holes we'll go down, but that's the start point. How do you want to jump in, Danny? What's the first top of the mind thing for you?
Well, the river quote, amount of times I use that a year with different players, with the ups and downs of sport and the winning and the losing. You might say good days, bad days, explainable things, unexplainable things, and so on. And you're basically trying to get somebody, a bit like we covered on Ian McGilchrist's podcast, the left hemisphere and right hemisphere perspectives, that you are saying to a person, you are not this stuck computer machine-like thing that just presses play, goes out, does a performance in the same conditions, in the same mindset, mood you're in. Basically, you're always in a different place at a different time, and therefore you're always a different person playing a different kind of match. So it's full on context, and not only does the context change in terms of its environment, opponents, weather conditions, how important the situation is, the time of year, how tired you are, all the things that go in the mix. You've also, in the background, you're growing older as a person anyway. You get your life is moving on, you're changing in your cells, your your age, your fitness, so you're always in flux as well, as is your opponents. Throw in a bit of luck and chance and absurd events and all that. So, the metaphor of you're on a river, or there's a river flowing along, and you're never the same person either, and that's never the same river that you step in. I use it hopefully as a bit of a loosening stroke freeing concept, so that people look at things a little bit more right hemisphere, multiple perspectives. And although there are truths to things, so you could do sports analysis, for example, on again a football or a squash in my terms, and say, yes, the ball landed there, it was passed to there, it did this, it did that, and you can annotate exactly what that ball did in terms of angles. But who's playing it? So the ball could land in the same place on a squash court. I come up to play that shot. It looks completely different than if you did it, John, who's never played squash. For me, it'd be perfect slot to hit a shot. For you, it might be too close to you. So depending on the perspective that you're taking, there is a truth, but there is also another randomness about it. That dependent on who's in that situation. So what Heraclitus does is superb, because he gets you thinking. He forces you to not just say, well, everything's relative, nothing, it all depends on the person. Say, no, more complex. There are truths, there is some facts, but it really does depend on the perspective you decide to take. And that for me helps. It's like, damn, it's a bit frustrating because you just want to know, but he's good at that. He makes you think.
One of his other nicknames was the Riddler. So he's known as the weeping philosopher for being pretty down on humans and their capacity to live good lives. But he was known as the Riddler as well because he wrote in these really strange, quite cryptic, quite aphoristic little statements. He didn't really write big books, just wrote one book, dead short, pithy statements, boom. And they'd take a bit of work to get your head around. They're not obvious sometimes what they mean and what they're getting at. So some people like that, some people don't. They're just like, you're right, just tell me what the crack is here, Heraclitus. What's the nature of reality? He wasn't that obvious. His metaphor, though, so we mentioned water. Yes, he uses water as a flow analogy, but his metaphor for reality, not a literal metaphor, was fire. So fire is the nature of reality, because if you think of a flame, it's never still, is it? It's always flickering. Some bits are hotter and igniting, whereas others are going out and smoking and all that kind of stuff. That was his headline, if you like, for what the underpinning substance of reality is, even though I didn't mean that literally. And I'm always quite like that. We'll probably talk repeat in a little while and things. That notion of you're never fixed, you're never static, everything's in motion, always, constantly. You're never done until you're dead. You're always moving, and the universe is just that on a cosmic level. So this is not just you in your life, it's on a cosmic scale. This is what's underpinning everything. Now, it might be a little bit theoretical in a way for people, but he talks about the logos, which is this underpinning force, this cosmic intelligence that's doing that. So you might think of fire, and this constant flux and change is quite chaotic, and it can feel like that, can't it? It can look quite chaotic on the surface, but he was it's not. There's this grander, more unifying power underneath that's unifying and guiding. So nothing's random in a way. There's this logos behind it that's quite rational in a way, that is guiding the universe. So I don't think we've talked about Taoism, have we, in an episode? But the Tao in Taoism, the logos is quite similar to that, this regulating force that Heraclitus is it's not rocket science, just tune into the logos. There's no big complicated plan here. All you need to do is just tune into that underpinning flow of life, that underpinning force, and life's dead easy. But he was like we said, he was pretty critical of people. Is we're all knocking around up in our own heads thinking we know better, because we bring this subjective, personal intelligence where you think, no, I know better than this universal cosmic force. And that's what gets us into trouble sometimes. We drift away from the logos and recognizing this flux and change and flow because we think we know better. And I quite like that as well. He was, people might have heard of the temple at Delphi, I think, where there's those first inscriptions people talk of, and the famous one is know thyself. And Heraclitus was you should do that quite literally. So yeah, know yourself as in know who you are, what makes you tick. There's some of those kind of inner drives and values and beliefs and stuff. But literally know thyself, know on your own. Trust yourself to trust like your own instincts and impulses and just intuitive vibes on a situation, and that's more in tune with the logo. He hammered people who went to others for wisdom. And like, why would you go and listen to a teacher giving a lecture? Like, that's like secondhand. Like, that's not real true knowledge. The true knowledge comes from yourself and having your own thoughts and opinions. So you can imagine him off in the hills, just like hammering people because they're all too thick to get him, and he's just kind of looking down on the city where he was in, just because he thought we were fools in a way. Really, it wasn't hard. It was dead easy. Just tune into the logos and you'll get it.
What's interesting was we did a podcast on hope last time, and since read a book by young Bill Chan, is it?
Yeah, Byung-Chul Han.
Byung-Chul Han. And I've only read 4 of his books. I don't know his name yet. And there's a part in it where he's talking about the spirit of hope, and it is about tuning back into yourself and so on. And he says somebody who is capable of genuine thought is not intelligent. Someone who Giles Deleuze, another philosopher, would say is an idiot. Only idiots love, and only idiots have true hope, which is a hopeless hope. In other words, it's not rational, and it's not, so what people think intelligence is now is remembering things, going to other people, learning something that's already been written. But only a true idiot can really know something fresh.
Yeah.
And now that sounds a bit harsh, like, you're an idiot. And only an idiot can love, because if you knew what love could do, we'll get onto the opposites in a minute. If you know how love can break your heart, which is a saying even in The Wizard of Oz, isn't it? They said to the Tin Man, when he says, I want a heart, he says, if you knew how much a heart would hurt, if you had one, you wouldn't want one. He said, I still want one. And and I think that what he's saying is that I've done this with players. You see it in modern life. Intelligence is this sort of gathering of information, or consuming information and consuming everything you can, so that in a way you don't have to think anymore. You just repeat what you've learned. So therefore, if you've learned so much, you are not really going to live with your own intuitions, because there's no spaces left. Everything you think, you've got like, there's someone been there before and come up with a solution, or come up with an intelligent answer. I suppose it's similar, isn't it? What he's asking you to do is to say, no, like, take part with your own intellect. Again, a bit like McGilchrist with the right hemisphere. You don't always need to see psychologists, therapists. You don't always need reasons and theories and models. You might get a diagnosis, say, on a mental condition, it's freeing, but it's also very trapping, isn't it? It blocks you in, but it also gives you some clues as to what's going on. I suppose he's saying, maybe ask for if there's a problem, maybe ask for a diagnosis. Maybe there are some factual conditions around something, but there's so many variants to that. What's your context within that? What's your very particular circumstances within that loose categorization of maybe you've been categorized into a certain bracket of a disease, or a generalized form of mental condition or physical condition. And you hear that a lot, don't you? You hear a lot of people that they'll take the medicine, but then they'll take their version of it and heal themselves. They'll go and see a psychologist, but like, they'll come to a point. I even heard Arina Sabalenka saying it the other day, who just won the US Open. And she said, actually, I've been playing all year. I have my psychologist, but I realized I've got to work out my own psychological issues with guidance from the psychologist pointing a bit. I was too reliant on her to tell me the psychological answers, but I didn't know. I also read a book on holiday when I lost the Wimbledon final about how the head and the heart need to work together more. And right in the pressure moments of the final, I took back control, where I would have definitely freaked out in my head. My heart almost played. Then you see Alcaraz in the men's final. I told myself, have courage, don't be afraid. And you'd think to yourself, why would someone like Alcaraz need to say to himself, don't be afraid? I mean, he's Alcaraz, he's won 5, he's amazing. But even, relatively his perspective, he's gone inside himself, he's thought about it, and he's admitted and had the courage to say, I'm feeling a bit frightened today in myself for some reason. So I said to myself, looked in the mirror, and I said, come on, have courage. And, courage, these words like courage, responsibility, hope, faith. I think faith is important because I also think there's an element of the cosmos, logos, what he said. Like maybe today it's my day. Maybe the force, maybe the predetermined intelligence of the universe is with me today. Maybe it's not, but let's hope it is. So there's a hope element. So there's control, but there's only so much I can control. You know, if I can control the controllables, as they say, but I still, in a weird way, need the world and the universe to go my way a bit. I still need a bit of luck. I still need a bit of the moment. Maybe they don't play so well for whatever. And that's just how it goes, and there's a randomness to that, and a sort of beauty to it because it's emergent and it's becoming, and we don't know what it's going to be. And I think that is where you can play sports or life with this dual force of, yeah, I'm a bit frightened, but I'm also hopeful. I have a bit of fear that we might lose, and I'd prefer not to, but I've also got this hope that we might win. And I think that hope is quite a good one because it's a word that doesn't it sits in the middle of, say, optimism. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. You don't have to think. It's just going to be fine. And pessimism, which is, no, we're never going to win. It's not, it's all going to be an anxiety. And I think hope sits in the middle somewhere where you have to kind of have faith. You have to have faith in something that's not you, it's like a spirit or something. And I think that's a nice feeling. And I think that's giving yourself up a bit to the river or whatever, what mood's the river in. You know, you take the river analogy on, you can row upstream some days as much as you want, but the river's going to take you down. Sometimes the river's not flowing very fast and you need to row to get somewhere. But sometimes you might just decide to put your oars down and chill out, look at the scenery. But some days, you know, if you don't get rowing, you're going to hit the rocks and you have to steer it. Some days you think, right, I need to go to the shore and take some time out and just have a week off the river or something, or, you know, it's not, you've got decisions to make, but it isn't all about you either. There's other things going on. And I think Heraclitus is always doing that. He's always sort of saying, like Nietzsche would, using these opposites. For example, you know, suffering can be good. It's not always to be avoided. And we'll get onto the opposites, won't we? You know, in a second.
Yeah. Well, part of what you reminded me of there is we did an episode on the self a while ago, didn't we?
Yes.
And I was mentioning David Hume in that, and his whole thing, he had that bundle theory of self in that there is no underlying identity or core self to any of us. All we are these bundles of perceptions in the moment. So how you feel now, your emotions, like your sensations, all the stuff that's going on for you in the moment, that's you. But that doesn't move through time. And Heraclitus was onto that a couple of thousand years before. So you're on about Alcaraz. That's kind of that, isn't it? Well, yeah, in that moment, it's like, how can he need courage? He's Alcaraz, but he isn't Alcaraz. All he is a bundle in that moment. And that's what Heraclitus is saying. It's like nothing's fixed from the universe all the way down to the atoms and the cells of your body. They're all in flux constantly. So there is no static I or self or you underneath. And that's very different. Like I like the Hume stuff. A lot of people don't. They really cling to that. No, there is like this core thing of me. But Heraclitus is the same. There isn't. It's just flow. You're always becoming. In any one moment, you are becoming. You are not finished and fixed. And identity is the same as that. So you just reminded me on that. Just in terms of a little, when I mentioned about, I think you said there, you don't know. Whereas Heraclitus actually said, is like, many fail to grasp what they have seen and cannot judge what they have learned, although they tell themselves they know. So that's, you could go and listen to a podcast, read a book, watch a lecture or whatever, and you can go, oh, well, I've learned that. And you think you know it. It's like you don't. So he says, applicants for wisdom do what I have done, inquire within. So it's all from like your own lived experience and your own like rational reason and thinking things through and coming up with it yourself. That's the only way you really learn anything. And if you go to others for that, you're an idiot for Heraclitus. Just to move on to the opposites that you were talking about. So this is a big part of his philosophy. This notion that opposites aren't kind of either or, they're always in play in any one moment. So there is a unity of opposites. So the cosmos isn't this stable place with fixed things in it. It's always in motion, like we've been saying. And Heraclitus thinks there's a harmony to that comes from this tension that occurs between opposites. So he says the cosmos works by harmony of tensions like the lyre and bow. So like the lyre is like a musical instrument. So the strings of that, they only produce music by the tension that's put through them. Same like a bow and arrow. Like you have to shoot an arrow, you have to pull the string back or whatever. But as you're pulling that back, you're pushing the bow forward, aren't you, to create that tension. So it only works by these unity of opposites being in place. So cold and hot, wet and dry, young and old, awake and asleep. They're all one and the same thing for Heraclitus. They rely on each other. They need each other. Even life itself. To be able to live, you need to be able to die. and to death and life are always like intimately connected. They're in unity all the time. And again, he thinks that typifies or defines the universe. Nothing exists permanently because it's always in flux, but nothing exists independently either because everything is in this interconnected flow. And you have to sort of live with that in mind for Heraclitus. That perspective is really important for him if you're going to live a good life. And most people don't. Like we've talked about quite a bit in different things. Most people live in these sort of rigid dualities, don't they? Like black or white. It's either that or it's that. Whereas they're like, no, it's both. So that there's always like these what can seem like contradictions, but they're not. They're always fluid in this deeper harmony and this deeper unity that underpins the universe. So you only really know health, don't you? Or you know health the most just after you've been ill.
Yeah.
So most people, like past few years, it's been COVID. I'm like, well, it's only like when you've had COVID and then like, God, how shit did I feel then? And then like, how good do you feel? When you've not ill and you haven't got a cold and you just feel good. You were on about going for a run earlier before we started recording. Like you can only know health with illness. They have to both come together. You were on about Laura, like she's been away, like working hard, grafting on a thing. I worked hard there. I proper like put it in. Well, that's when you appreciate rest.
Yeah.
Because you've got that contradiction of work and rest. How many people have a big success after a big failure?
Yeah.
That lassie who got battered in the Wimbledon final.
Yeah.
You know about? And it's just like that has to be able to succeed, you have to be willing to fail because it's the same thing all the time. So he just sees that as that's all part of this bigger cycle that's going on that underpins reality.
It's funny. I just went for a run. You were in the countryside, and I nearly got steamed over by a farmer with his big tractor, and it's silage spraying, and it was like, oh, minute. But you've got to quickly go, yeah, but that's the countryside. Like you see the cows, they're seeing all the, the nature. When you're out in nature a lot, you're seeing, in the seasons, you're seeing, the opposites a lot, aren't you? If you want, you've got cows in your back field and they all look pretty and nice, and you're watching them, and that means someone's got to get rid of the cow shit, doesn't it? You want to grow the fields, you need manure. There's this. What's interesting, I think it's helped me a bit, as little small things really that you get pissed off about that you demand that'd be perfect, but you're like, it's the rough and the smooth, isn't it? A bit more like, well, it's like when you have a kid or something, you gain in joy and all these things, but you also have to have the worry and the tensions immediately there. What I liked in the handbook again, what he said was about consumers. He said we're the consumers now, with the fact that we consume a lot, like Amazon, this, get this, problem, solve it. He said when you're sort of consuming and solving problems instantly all the time with technology and you're buying things, as consumers have no hope. All they have are wishes and needs. They don't need a future. They're shot to satisfy a constant present neediness. They become desperate. And I thought that was brilliant. Was in contrast to this, the spirit of hope is likewise an onward striding. It keeps working away amid darkness. There is no light without darkness.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean. If you're always get a bit, I'm a bit anxious, I'm a bit bored. I don't know about my dress. I don't know about my jeans. Buy a new one. Solve it. Bang, bang, sorted, sorted. Answered that email, done that. That's off my mind. You're never holding tension. All you're trying to do all the time
Release it.
is get rid of that, move on. Well, that's something you can never win. It's like if you're protective as a sports athlete. Don't lose, don't lose, don't lose. Get fit, don't lose. Don't eat that, you're gonna die. Don't do that. But go for a run, then you'll look well. The wolves will always be at your door, and you're not sat back, relaxed to a point of flow. That's what I love when I watch Alcaraz or someone when they're flowing in sport and they're smiling. It's like these players get it. They're being serious, but they're also having fun at the same time. They're bouncing across the two. There's a smile. And it's a bit like when I see Alcaraz say, in a shot and he smiles and he laughs at his box, he's under pressure. He's nervous, but he still smiles, and his family go, oh, and they're all tense, but they're cheering him on. They're positive, but they're negative. They hope he's going to play an ace serve. I think that's amazing, because that's the sweet spot, isn't it, of life? You're embracing, this could go either way. And in a way, if you can't do that in sport, where can you do it? Because sport, it's supposed to be important, but it isn't. It isn't like you're being shot at, is it? It isn't like you're seeing the rough and the smooth of, say, a disease that you've got or something, or you're going down in an aeroplane or something. There isn't. It's hard to see. But when you're playing a game of sport, surely that's a time where you can have the courage and the perspective and the resilience to go, you know what, I'm playing this game to push myself to a point, like surfers do with waves and rock climbers do with rock climbing. So it's just interesting enough where I could lose and it'd hurt, and I could win and it'd be brilliant. Whereas if I just keep beating the same person or riding the same small wave all my life, where's the tension? I just know I'm going to win 100 times out of 100, and pay me as much money as you want, but that's boring. So yeah, these philosophies, these ways of looking at life, this fact that, if you want to feel good, you're going to have to feel bad sometimes. If you want to feel relief, you're going to have to be put under stress at some point. If you want to feel what true hope is, you're going to have to feel hopeless at times to get the spirit back and learn back about life. So it's the mountain and the valleys, isn't it? You can't have a valley without the mountain, and vice versa. It's the quite obvious things, obviously all throughout the Bible as well. And it's a bit like at the end of my study, it was saying the end of my PhD research, it was really got down to 3 or 4 simple points. Stay in motion with the world, wonderment. Like notice how wonderful the world is, like the stars, the cosmos, the intelligence that's there, the beauty, and be amazed by things as much as you can. Move through the phases of your life as you can, and in those different phases, try and tap into what's making you tick. That intuition. Where do you feel like you need to go? Do you need to try more? Do you need to let go? And knowing that it's not a science. It's just a feeling. And that doesn't mean kick out going to experts. It doesn't mean trying to pin some things down, and getting absolute solutions. Try for that absolute solution, but know that solution that worked in 1997 might not work in 2020. Elements of it might, but given the differences now with the different players and all these things, that's that's something to lighten what we might call the left brain seriousness of I know. You don't know. You're trying to know, and you're trying to solve the puzzle all the time.
Well, I think a lot of that is rooted, which is where he brings in this notion of strife. So this generative tension, this opposition that he believes brings harmony to the universe. Most people aren't knocking around in their day-to-day searching out opposition and strife, are they? They're like trying to do the opposite, like you said, in terms of, well, I'm just trying to reduce any tension and opposition I've got. I just want to get it off my plate. It's very different to actually seek that out. So you can see why Nietzsche we've talked about will to power. We did an episode ages ago. Nietzsche was a huge, I won't say fan, but he really respected Heraclitus. He took a lot from his ideas. So you can see how that will to power comes from this like What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. That seeking out suffering, very Nietzschean, but it comes from Heraclitus. But it wasn't that he's like glorifying, he's not like telling you to go off to war and fighting. He's not like glorifying violence and war in that sense, but it underpins existence. So he says, we must know that war is common to all and all things come into being through strife. So it, like, existence itself requires this strife, this conflict, and through that conflict, that's what produces order. And Heraclitus might seem a little bit abstract, but he calls that justice. He sees that as justice in the universe, that this opposition and this war and this strife, it's almost like a courageous thing to take part in that and to immerse yourself in it. So he says, like, war is the father of all and king of all. Some he made gods, some men, some slaves, some free. Now, that's like very Nietzschean, that, I think, when he talks about his slave morality and master morality and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, this seek it out, because the more that strife is there, the more that those opposites get held in balance. And that's this cycle of creation and destruction and creation and destruction, like the seasons, isn't it? Now we're going into autumn here, and you can just sense it in the world, can't you? Like the temperature's different, the light's different, the trees are changing. That's part of this like opposition and conflict. And he's like, without that, there wouldn't be any harmony, there wouldn't be any life, because nothing would be moving without that conflict and that tension. So, yeah, he calls it, I think it's kaikion, is like an ancient Greek drink. I think of it as like, when you get like a vinaigrette, and you leave it in the fridge for like a few months, it separates out, doesn't it? It's like the oil separates out from the other ingredients, whatever's in it. Heraclitus says even the kaikion separates if it's not stirred. So you got to like shake up the vinaigrette for the vinaigrette to become the vinaigrette and to be able to use it on your whatever you're putting it on, your salad or whatever. So it's that like agitation and tension that's necessary to keep things alive and unified and living. So it's not like a destructive chaos. It's this life-giving tension. And I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, kind of move away from that when it crops up, rather than seeing that, no, this is good, this is a positive thing. By taking part in this tension, I'm getting closer to who I'm supposed to be or what my potential is. So Alcaraz, I need to be more courageous. That's that in a way. It's just like, right, I've got to face this.
Yeah.
Not going to be easy, this. I could easily just pull out with a hip injury or something. But no, you've got to that destructive, what might feel destructive is life-giving. That's what's making Alcaraz be alive when he's in those moments, facing the tension. And like we said, that logos is the thing that's guiding that. It's not random. There's an order, there's a rationality to it that's underneath it. So let yourself be guided by it rather than try to avoid it and move away from it. Now, we did an episode on the spiral dynamics not too long ago, didn't we? I think Heraclitus, in some ways, was one of the original stage turquoise on the spiral back in the day. So that spiral perspective of unity and like this cosmic global perspective, very holistic. That's what he was saying then. And for him and a lot of the ancient Greeks, it's like a form of therapy to think about the cosmos on that level. Try and take this, you mentioned wonderment before, this cosmic wonderment of like, wow, look at the stars and how like all this like bigger thing that's going on. Like a cosmic consciousness, you might call it. That's what he's trying to get us to do, innit? Get out of your own little head in your own busy little thinking, oh, this is important, and try to run from all the tension. Like, get this cosmic, bigger pattern of life that's going on. Step back, see the big picture. That's very turquoise, I think, even though it was a few thousand years ago. That, to me, seeing life as this flowing process, there's a hidden harmony to it, tension, opposites. That's quite a cosmic perspective that can be quite therapeutic in the busyness of just the day-to-day bullshit that's going on. I'll let you come in now, but the Stoics took a lot of that from, so people are quite familiar these days with Stoic philosophy, aren't they? Well, the Stoics were they weren't ripping him off, but they were inspired by Heraclitus, by embracing this world as this fire, this living fire, the Logos. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most well-known Stoics, all things are interwoven with one another, a sacred bond unites them. That's the Logos, the tension, the flux, the flow, all that stuff. Creative process that's going on. So people were doing it yesterday with the red moon. It was too cloudy, wasn't it? I don't know if you looked out. There was like an eclipse some kind of an eclipse. So it's called a blood moon, isn't it? It turns the moon red for like 90 minutes in the sky. That's kind of that bigger thing that's going on, isn't it? The moon isn't just stuck in the sky, it's there. Everything's in process around it, and Flux is just tuning into that a little bit. I think it's a good perspective to have rather than just in the busyness of life all the time. 6 inches in front of your face.
Yeah. Well, it's the old, it's again, it's opposites, isn't it? You might be really in your head, in your context, in your subjective, phenomenology, what's happening here, but that ability to stretch out and like massively change your perspective to the level, go all the way back to the universal forces. You think you're in control of your little important life, but you're not. If that planet hadn't have banged into that one, you wouldn't have even been here in the first place. Would you rather have, it's a million, billion, trillion to one or whatever that life even happened or something, on the earth, and never mind you were born of the million.
Yeah, but I think you got to be a little bit careful with that, innit? It can get nihilistic.
Yeah,
And I'm
because
not saying that. I'm not saying like, oh, well, nothing matters. Who gives a shit? It's all, you're just like a speck of dust in like the cosmos.
for a certain person, that's what I'm saying. The stretching, but you don't stay in that extreme because you're just going to go, what's the point? But you're basically going and asking bigger questions than you've ever asked before or noticed.
But you wouldn't, for Heraclitus, that's his point. You wouldn't ask what's the point. The point is the point, because the logos, it isn't just random, chaotic meaninglessness. The logos has an intention to it. The universe has an intention to it. I think it was Aristotle he brought in like teleology, and Ray Peat and people like that were into that. The universe has a purpose. It is syntropic in that way. It's moving towards greater order and greater complexity, and there's a process of that. That's very Heraclitean.
Yeah, but when I watch, I don't know, what is it, Wonders of the Universe or whatever, or them shows that they now do, this planet did this and life. That's how that makes me feel. It doesn't make me feel, oh, I'm just a speck of dust, what's the point? That makes me go, who designed that? That's amazing. Who's behind that? What? It's not that I think it's God did it. I actually see it more as a force. I see it more as a creative thing we'll never understand. And when I come out of the show and I watch it, it's that weird feeling, isn't it? You flip on, say, the other channel, might be a game of football, so you think, what's that? like how have we got from that to that? But you sort of then like see the link. And I think history couldn't do it with time, can't it? You can go to the pyramids, you can visit places, you can do space, you can stargaze through your binoculars or look up and wonder. And it doesn't mean that you're so small that you're irrelevant. For me, it makes me again, for certain moments, not feel that you have to be in control of your destiny in every way. It's in some ways your destiny is predisposed. There's a flow going on. Everything was here before you. It's going to be here after you. You're joining in. You're on the river. You can row where you want to a point. Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't think everything is down to you all the time. You could, like I said earlier, I feel like you sometimes you might have some successes in controlling things. So then you think that you're in control of absolutely everything. So I don't know whether that's being a control freak or whatever. And you want certainty, or like the more certainty you have, the more certainty you need. Perhaps when you've traveled, when you've been born in places that are chaotic, maybe your comfort level is chaos, constant chaos, isn't it? Who knows? Like, praise be to God or whatever it is. Flipping, I hope I managed to get through today. But when you like, I think what Han was saying about consumers, when you're used to pressing buttons and reading things and being taught things that make everything comfortable quick, maybe you build maybe there's more of an intolerance to the natural occurrence of all these things that are going to happen anyway, despite what you do, aging, things like that. So in one way you can think, I'm the youngest I've ever been today, I'm 70, I'll never be, so don't worry. But in another way, you're getting older, just deal with it's happening, you're gonna move on. So there's a positive aspect to another year, and there's a negative aspect in terms of, depending on how you look at it. you just say, well, I hope I carry on living well, but you have that philosophical kind of balance of that entropy and syntropy again. Things are breaking down, but things are still beautiful and growing in me. I'm still changing, but I'm also getting older.
But that's where, so I wrote something the other day about Brian Johnson. So people might be familiar. He's basically the don't die guy. He's got this
Yeah.
whole movement around basically getting rid of aging because of technology and AI and science, basically. I think that's a really relevant point to bring in to crowbar in a bit of repeat. So Democritus was in that group with Heraclitus in a way back in ancient Greece. Democritus was the guy who came up with the atom. He basically was like, right, well, reality is basically atomic in that when you really drill into it, you get to the atomic level and that's what everything's made of, like tiny little atoms. And science ever since has been on that path in a way. So it's been very reductionist. It's basically science to this day, very left hemisphere. Let's chop up the world into the smallest little pieces we can get. And that's how we sort of operate. Like, so medicine's obsessed with genetics, isn't it? Genes. Well, it's just your genes. It's this, it's that. Brian Johnson's out there. Well, basically, we're all just machines. If we take the right supplements and do this and do that, then you're more like a machine than an organism in terms of science. Like Elon's out there whacking circuit boards in people's heads and stuff, isn't he? Like the Neuralink stuff. Yeah. So we've moved away from this holistic perspective, and that's what Pete was getting at anyway. It's just like, life is this ever-living fire. It's alive. It's energetic. So for Heraclitus, life is energy. It's this fire that's constantly burning and creating and transforming. But we don't see health and vitality like that. We just try and go, all right, you've got that, so you'll go to that doctor who specializes in that, and we'll give you this drug. And that's not what life's like from an energetics. It's very reductionist. Let's break everything down. But Heraclitus was like, no, like it's about aliveness and consciousness. So like matter is conscious for Heraclitus. And Pete was the same. Like energy is purposeful. The way that energy moves through our cells, it's trying to shape life in a constructive way to be more complex and better. So Ray Peat was a massive critic of like digitization, which the world we're in, everything is digitized. And he's like, but that's just breaking the world down into these little digital units and like static categories. But that's not what reality is. It's this Heraclitean fluid flux thing. And once you break it down into the parts, well, you've totally lost the whole now, because that's not what reality is like. But science went with Democritus. So it's interesting when you look at modern, like the quantum guys, which is like way over my head, all the quantum physics and stuff. It's very Heraclitean now. They've come round to this process thing of like, well, something can be in two places at once. And, like observation. And if you observe that there, well, that changes its position. And quantum computing, I think the same. It's very Heraclitean. So they're sort of realizing we cocked up a bit when we went with Democritus into this real atomized, very left hemisphere, zoomed in, very sort of analytical. And we've lost this right hemisphere intelligence of the flow, the flux, the aliveness, the ongoing flow of this creative process of life. And obviously, we've talked about Ray Peat in the past and bioenergetics and stuff. Well, that totally changes how you live. Like, if you start to see life in that way, well, that totally changes everything about your health, like your habits, just how you view the world is totally different. If you see this fire-based life as a living, ever-changing fire, that can be revolutionary, I think. Whereas I don't think people often see it as, no, I'm like, I am who I am, aren't I? Just like, that's my lot in life. Like, it wasn't I got dealt these cards, that was me. Nothing I could do. Like, the doctors will tell you that, oh, well, you've got these genes, so you're screwed because it means that. But it doesn't. Through a Heraclitean bioenergetic Ray Peat lens, all bets are off. Everything's in motion and in play at the same time.
Do you think that there is a personality or temperament predisposition in people? I know we've talked about this before, but what we're saying here is, I don't know, people who see life naturally this way, or the temperaments, or they get this. They've spent a lot of time in nature, or they like art, they like songs, music, poetry. The flowiness. Because obviously songs and music and rhythms, and even some people have taken drugs, or you have a drink and you sort of like relax and you see you're a bit more, you're less, yes, well, some people, but up to a point your brain goes into that place. Do you think do you think that there are certain, because I can see I can talk to people about this, and I know they get it. I know that they go on a walk and they know what I'm saying in their feelings, and they're like, yeah, of course, Dan, yeah, I get it, yeah, change, flux, rivers, birds, seasons, yeah, art, poet, look at that picture, yeah, music. And then some people look at you, they look at you like, and they might be older as well, and they've had many years to change or learn or try and experience things, and they're just like, nah, like, what are you on about? This is just, this is like, no, I am what I am, and this was what happened to me, and I can't change it. And if you were me, you wouldn't. Do you think? I don't think that people are necessarily lazy or horrible or stupid or anything like that. I just think that they're not predisposed to go into these places. I don't know. I know that sounds contradictory, but it is a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Is what I'm saying. Do you have to be a certain kind of person to sort of take a Heraclitean view? I mean, was he a certain kind of guy, and was Democritus a certain kind of thinker as well in where they were coming from in their own personalities?
They must be. I tell you a good one for me recent days. I don't know if you saw, Chris Hoy, cyclist.
Yeah,
He's stage 4 cancer, isn't he? Which is
yeah,
obviously like brutal diagnosis in that you've basically been told like you've only got X amount to
yeah,
live. Now, I know it's almost a stupid example in a way because it's so extreme. And who knows how like you can't assume how you would act in the same thing. But if we're talking about, all right, well, if we're going to live practically, what we're going to do practically in terms of this Heraclitean worldview, well, the headline thing would be embrace change, wouldn't it? So he's been told, well, you can't do that anymore. You can't be like a world record cyclist or whatever, Olympic gold medalist. This is going to be your thing now. And he was on the news this morning. He set up this big charity where they'd done this, like specifically for people with stage 4 cancer. So he's created this movement, and he was interviewed, and I thought, good on him. And a lot of people do. But he was like, yeah, he was just like, what, how can I use this obviously it's a brutal thing. I would never choose it in like, why would you ever pick this? But this is how things are. What can I make of this now? How can I use this for good? And he set up this charity where there was thousands of people there try to raise money for these different cancer charities. That's embracing change, isn't it? He's not sat there going, woe is me. What a shit deal I've been dealt. Why this isn't fair? He's just gone, well, what can I do with this? Is again, headline thing, find harmony and tension.
yeah.
He's using that to find order and create like a positive outcome of this like brutal thing. He's finding harmony in the tension of like, well, I want to live, I've got kids, I want to do that, but I can't. There's actually a harmony in that, isn't there? Good will come of it. And again, you'd never pick it, but he's seeing the conflict in opposites, and he's using it as a creative force to drive balance and growth, and like positive things will come of that. And again, don't want to belittle people who are like, because it can come across that it's a bit like condescending. It's a stupid example in a way, but it's that in your if he can do that, how can most people not like think like, right, how can I embrace change? Like you talked about age.
Yeah.
How many people just moan about getting older? Oh, I can't do that anymore. Like, yeah, I used to be able to do it. It's just like, all right, but what can you do now? Like, let's embrace the change of age, and there's loads of positive things to getting older.
Well, again, I go back, like we were taught the entropy and the syntropy. So there's some entropy going on, obviously, in the sort of physical body at the cellular level, as they know and they might see and he can feel, obviously. So that's almost going on. But then on a different level, there's this syntropy going on where he's creating beauty and order and positive things for future people, future meaning, where all that ripple effect, isn't it?
That's that broader perspective.
Where does that end up going? Yeah.
Yeah, he's adopting a broader perspective because he's going, all right, I can see myself in the whole here. That was my history. That's what I did. He actually said on the interview I saw him with, he was like, I've got a platform. And he was like, once I thought, I've got a platform here, I can do something. I can use this platform here. Not just for fame and status, but I can use this to see myself in the bigger whole. Like, I can be compassionate for other people with issues. There's people with stage 4 cancer who are way worse off than he is. I can be humble. I can try and be a bit wiser in my action to use that platform. I think that's very Heraclitean.
Yeah, I think that's why I brought the word hope up before, and again, that light in the you can't have hope where it's already all good. There has to be light and dark, otherwise you wouldn't need it. And like I said, Hans said the true hope is a hopeless hope in a way, but you still go. Hope's like a searching movement forwards, doesn't demand anything must happen. It's and without the spirit of hope, action withers. It just becomes an activity or problem solving. It's like means to an end. Will this do this? Whereas I suppose with your example and with many examples that we do, I think it's nice well, I'm going to do that, but nothing needs to come of it. Something could come of it. Something might come of it. It probably will be good because, the intentions, especially as it trickles to others, but nothing, I'm not demanding anything because of this. I say try and different drop down a level, take to players and performers. Like nobody owes you anything. The game doesn't owe you a thing. If anything, you owe the game. You go out there. You don't demand anything from it. You go out there and, just playing this sort of searching movement, like give the effort, hope it's going to be your day. Hopefully the work, the skills, the timing, all of it will come. But it's a spirit of faith. But as soon as you make it, just as an activity or a problem solving thing to solve and go, so did it, I won, I'm bet it loses that. Well, what are you going to do next time? How are you going to play next time? Now you've got that, you've solved that problem. Is everything just one problem, damn thing after another? Or are you more aligned in with, the river and spirits and flows of bigger things that are going on? I suppose it gets into religion, but again, that's where I go back to sort of faith and courage and uncertainty, more right hemisphere. So I think this anyone listening, the Ian McGilchrist stuff, the stuff around syntropy, the stuff around hope, and this stuff, obviously Heraclitus type flow and process. I think it's all kind of the same stuff, really, isn't it? Or maybe our last 4 or 5 podcasts have been a bit more like that, and we're possibly going a little bit deeper on it, but we've gone back to the original guys.
That's why I think there's nothing new under the sun. Is that it's always, I always really enjoy it when you find like a thread and you can trace it and you go, actually, yeah, a lot of Nietzsche, a lot of the existentialists really was in some of this stuff of this. If you think of it as like a philosophy of becoming in a way, repeat and that agenda you can go down. There's like the panpsychists at the minute. They're all talking about, well, basically consciousness is like the first, like everything's conscious. Well, that's very Heraclitean in a way. The universe is conscious. They've all got the roots in that. But yeah, if we were wrapping up, like, again, this sounds just like, if you see like these shitty pop sports psych type people, it almost sounds like that. But I just made a note of a bit like the Chris Hoy thing, using adversity as opportunity. It's like cheesy, but that was, again, that I think that is part of this. Embrace change, find harmony in the tensions, and maybe not actively seek it out, but when you come across those moments, those difficult moments and those tense periods or phases in your life, use adversity as opportunity. That's like Psych 101, isn't it? Like, recognize difficulty as this is like a bit of a seed of change here. This is a chance for some renewal, and there's a new potential in this. So you mentioned Alcaraz, easy example, isn't it? Feel a bit nervous today. Well, this is an opportunity. Let's practice being courageous. Let's show courage. That's Heraclitean. That's living this wisdom. The fire of life, that's what it means. And again, I know this is easier said than done, and people can be in some quite shit situation where it is easier said than done, isn't it?
Oh, of course, yeah, because that this is it again. Life can be easy, then it hits you hard, and reality, and you get stuck, don't you? And you're trapped, and you can't think the way we're thinking, like when you're in it sometimes. But you're just trying to put the percentages up, aren't you? In the good times, where you can, you're riding good, you're fortunate, forces are going with you. Don't there's no point, like Toller would say, Toller, don't add more problems to the good times, because the bad times, are on the way in various guises. So like, if you can't, like acceptance, enjoyment, enthusiasm, there's 3 modes of being, if you can, and becoming. It's like, you're always taking part in that. Can you accept the situation? Is there any way that you can? That's number one. That if you can accept it, is the room that you could enjoy it? Probably not. Go back to acceptance, just because you can't. You can't change it as much as you think. Enthusiasm, and we're like, obviously someone like Chris Hoy there, he's going enthusiastically after this thing. And I think what it ultimately does for me, for my last point, is about meaning and purpose. When I work with players and people, it can just tell sometimes when the world's gone a bit, flat as a pancake. They've had a purpose, they've had a meaning, something's been going on. Could be looking after people. It could have been, being a professional athlete, inspiring the family. It could have been, a mother whose kids have gone off to uni or whatever. It could be someone who wanted to win a gold medal and then they won it and then the world went flat. It's a bit like, where's the meaning and the purpose all of a sudden? And I think if you've not got something higher, something that's even higher than that, like, universal flux, that you're on the river, you're on the river and it's really powering you down and it really is in charge. But as I said, you can still direct it a little bit. There's some days your river's just going to take you. And some days and some months it dries up completely, and it's like, but it's in a way still in charge. It is dictating the pace. It's dictating what's going on. You've kind of got to give into that a bit. You've got to, and this could be religion, it could be, believing in God, Jesus, it could be higher stories, like Man's Search for Meaning as well, where you don't just believe in good rather than evil. Whatever it is, the small things in your life are going to come and go, the things that you think are the big things. But if you can tap into some of these bigger philosophical dimensions in a way, what the likes of Heraclitus is saying, I think it can make you feel a little warmer, a bit safer, a bit I'm looked after in some ways, and it's not all about the little me controlling everything. And that can bring a little bit more purpose. And if things aren't happening on a little micro level, on a macro level, you're just as equal as everybody else. You matter in the big scheme of things, even if little things aren't going on or down at you or what you think is the most important thing in the world. So that having something even higher can be is a little bit soothing. And I suppose that's like a wisdom, isn't it? And that, again, a sort of like a contrast that comes with age. Wisdom costs you years. You might increase your wisdom, but your age is your time. It costs you years and experience. And that, again, that's one of them opposites, isn't it? Yeah, that would be my last thing. For me, this stuff also, as well as being practical in a way, and obviously theoretical and good to talk about, it also brings meaning if you can really feel it.
And that's the word there for me, just to finish, is awareness. So I think Heraclitus might say that's where that cultivating awareness comes in. So I don't like the word mindfulness, but that just practicing that, tuning in a bit, reflecting, that's where that you pick up that sense of that deeper order of the logos, I think he would call it. All right, so maybe things aren't going well at the minute. Can I just tune into what's going on beneath that? And that needs that awareness. You can't do that when you're busy, can you? And you're just rushing from meeting to meeting, or email, I'll do it, I'll get on my phone, I'll do that. You've never got a minute's peace. You need to cultivate that awareness. All right, let's just try and tune into the logos here. What's the vibe? What's going on? And that's where you can find that meaning and purpose again. That's where you can tune into it. Because he's like, it's just there, it's in front of your face, it's dead easy. Just listen to the logos. But you can't if you think you know better than that. So that would be that for me. Anything else?
Well, just nature, yeah. That's one thing he was big on as well, wasn't it? The absolute obviousness and power of nature, birds, grass, trees, cyclical weather patterns, whatever it is. Usually, and I did see there was a big uptake in young farmers again. Watching the Clarkson thing, something about being outside, the opposite of getting dirty, then back in the house and working hard, disaster. It's by no means a smooth ride being a farmer, but it's actually ironically attracting a lot of young people, which is great, really, isn't it? Getting out there and reminding them of these other forces.
That's the meme. When you see people's LinkedIn profile, and it's some guy who was like, I think it was like Microsoft or something, like high level, like jobs for like 20 years in Microsoft, bang, bang, bang. And then he's like head of something or other at Microsoft. And then his next one is goose farmer. So he's obviously just done what you said and like just sacked off the rat race. I'll just go and be a goose farmer. Maybe he heard the logos and he's thought, right, that's my calling now. I'm going to go and do that.
They've got, if it is in front of your face, it's not necessarily Heraclitus wouldn't have possibly anticipated laptops and phones and TVs, would he? And four walls. Maybe he had an advantage because he was, outside all the time,
There you go. Although he died, he had a brutal death. He died, he got some kind of like eye infection or something, and then he comes down into the town and for some reason buries himself in cow shit because he thinks cold and hot, like the hot will dry him out. He was big on like drying out and he thought that would work and he ended up dying in a big pile of shit. So maybe he didn't have the best thing.
Oh, so he was wrong after all.
When we dance, the journey itself is the point. When we play music, will simply become completely absorbed in sound. And therefore you will find yourself living in an eternal now in which there is no past and there is no future and there is no this thing called difference between yourself and the world of nature outside you. This is red. This is green. This is something. This is nothing. This is solid. This is space. Between yourself and the world of nature outside you.